What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Standing Guillotine podcast. Today, we are going to talk about UFC Vegas 73. That was the most recent fight. That was Fight Night, Mackenzie Dern versus Angela Hill. And honestly, I thought this one was bound to be a stinker. The card as a whole probably didn't deliver up to its promise. But the main event was definitely easily the fight of the night. And very surprising to me, just the quality of the fight overall. I didn't have it pegged as anything great. It turned out to be probably one of my favorite fights that I've seen in recent memory, men or women's fights, frankly.
Yeah. No, it was a good fight. They both showed a lot of competition. Angela Hill, we found out Angela Hill's a chin.
Yeah, for sure.
And we found out that Mackenzie Dern can punch real hard. She looked jacked.
Yeah, I will say, so before the fight, she had a newer style where she got bigger and then cut bigger. But if you looked at the fight, Dern was like way bigger than Hill.
Yeah, she was huge in a good way.
Yeah, like just very, very muscular, very strong, was able to kind of manhandle Angela Hill. But what I was really impressed with is Hill's known primarily as a Muay Thai fighter, somebody who wants to be on her feet and strike.
Right.
She held her own defensively when it came down to the mat.
Yeah.
She didn't get submitted. And there were some real dangerous armbar attempts from somebody who is arguably she's a third-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. She's one of the best in the world. She's a world champion, multiple-time world champion. And Angela Hill, for someone who isn't known for that ability, showed a lot of strength with that. Yeah. And
I think Mackenzie Dern's judo kind of neutralized Angela Hill's Muay Thai.
Yeah, I mean, she was able to get in close, clinch, and then throw out of the clinch, which I think if you're Angela Hill, realistically, with your Muay Thai, she probably wanted to keep a little more distance, and she had trouble keeping the distance because Dern was very effective on her feet, which is a wrinkle to her game that we haven't actually seen. So when this fight got scheduled, my initial thought was great. It's another striker versus grappler matchup, where as soon as the grappler gets to the ground, the fight's over. But if the grappler can't get the fight to the ground, then the striker's gonna just piece them apart.
Yeah,
Mackenzie Dern showed a lot of development on her feet. But I will say there were a few flaws. Moving forward, if we're going to give her the credit, we also have to point out that there is still some areas of growth. She had a tendency to overthrow against a better opponent. Mm-hmm. She's going to get punished on that.
Yeah.
So she threw, and then it carried her too far.
It was a seismic toss, dude.
Well, no, I'm not even talking the judo toss. I'm talking throwing punches.
Oh.
She would put herself in a bad spot or a compromised position.
Yeah.
Where I think if Hill had a little more
she'd give herself a bad angle. Yeah. Where if a good fighter can get around it.
Right. You could slip, you could throw a counter punch, or you could realistically look for a takedown off of that.
Well, I think she was going for she was looking to end it a couple times.
She was swinging big. Yeah. She was going for the fences. She was going for, I'm going to knock Angela Hill out, which was pretty crazy because there's an argument to be made that in round 3, Herzog should have called the fight. Because there was about 30 seconds of getting teed off. Yeah. And I'm sure people who placed the bet, because if you notice the odds were plus 2,600 for her to win by TKO.
Yeah.
I'm sure people who took that were screaming at him for not finishing or not calling the fight off. But respect to Angela Hill, she did do enough to defend herself.
She protected herself.
Yeah. And so, but at the same time, it's the argument of if you're not doing anything other than just covering up, is that effective?
I know. I watched Here Comes the Boom over the weekend.
Kevin James.
This is what he did for 2 rounds.
Yeah, just cover my face. It's fine. Yeah. Cover my face. It's fine. No, it's not fine. You have to fight back. I think because it was at the end of the round, she got a little more leeway than a fighter normally would. If it was the middle of the round and she was in that spot and just covering up and turtled, that'd be one thing. But overall, I think that fight, I was surprised it went all 5. Dern looked like she could have finished. Hill had great defense. Didn't let her get the finish. But as much development as Angela Hill has shown, it was still an absolute, let's be fair to Mackenzie Dern, absolute domination of a fight. It was not in debate at any point. She won all 5 rounds.
She proved that she should be there.
I lied. She lost 1 round.
Did she?
Yeah.
Well, there was one point where I was like,
She got a
that round
10-8.
could have been like a 10-7. Like,
Yeah.
it was bad.
It was pretty ugly. Let me see. I know there was at least one 10-8.
That might have been the second, as I texted you.
Yeah, that was ugly. UFC scorecards. Let's see. Was that the second or was that the third that she barely escaped? Let's see the official scorecards. Not for 286. Here they are. So if you look down... Oh, this is Tembo Karimbo. Gotta scroll all the way down. So yeah, she won... So round 2 was the round that Hill won. It was round 3 where there was the 10-8. That could have possibly... You were saying, could that be a 10-7?
Yeah.
But if we look at this, right?
Oh, wait, no. This was not this fight. This was the Urbina fight. We'll get back to that.
Oh, yeah. But either way, this fight was ugly. So Mike Bell had it, Mackenzie Dern 10-9, 9-10, 10-8, 10-9, 10-8.
Yeah.
Sal D'Amato had 10-9, 9-10, 10-8, 10-9, 10-8. So same match, right? Ron McCarthy had 10-8 for the first, 10-8 for the third, and 10-8 for the fifth for a 49-43
Oh, yeah. It
win.
was never a question.
Yeah, like it was the second round. Give respect to Angela Hill. She was able to do some damage, but it was Mackenzie Dern's night.
Yeah.
And that was good for her because, I mean, she's obviously had challenges this year. She was talking about how she's going through a divorce. They
Her
have a
coach
young
wasn't
kid.
there.
Yeah, and it was just kind of a weird scenario, but it was good that she was able to get this fight moved to the Apex so that her daughter could be there because I'm sure that's important for her.
Yeah.
Although her daughter was in tears when she brought her daughter into the cage, so I don't know what that was about.
Probably scared.
Yeah, I mean, all that noise, but I don't know. I mean, I guess the Apex, I will say this, the Apex actually kind of got rowdy for that last fight.
Yeah.
There was actual decent crowd noise for that final fight, which deserved that fanfare. But this fight was originally scheduled to be the first fight of the main card of Charlotte.
Yeah.
And so it got bumped to a main event, and I was pretty skeptical. I mean, I'm typically pretty skeptical of women's fights being the headliner unless it's for a belt and it's like a must-watch fighter. Like Amanda Nunes, 100% I will watch a card built around Amanda Nunes. No doubt in my mind. I think Mackenzie Dern's starting to move into that territory for me.
I've liked Mackenzie Dern a lot. She's had a rough couple months and like a rough couple fights. But she has I think she has like the it factor.
I think she's definitely a warrior, and like what's really nice is so we criticized what was his name? Gracie. Kron Gracie for not showing any development, for just taking the jiu-jitsu, sitting on that and expecting to win that way. Mackenzie Dern, you could argue, had that same mindset coming in because yes, it was extremely dominant for her when she came in. Then it stopped being effective against the higher competition, and she's now shown that humility to train outside of just that discipline.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is going to explode her game. And then, of course, the willingness to move up and cut, bringing on a harder camp for herself. Because especially for women's fighters, cutting is not easy. I was reading an article on the Muay Thai subreddit, or not an article, a post on the Muay Thai subreddit. And there's an amateur fighter whose coach wants her to drop 20 pounds for a fight. Now, 20 pounds is a huge weight cut.
Yeah.
Especially for an amateur fight.
Yeah.
20 pounds is obscene. For a men's fighter. For a woman's fighter, somebody who's not even, I think she was like close to like 145. He wanted her to cut 20 pounds to fight at 125. That's a lot of weight for women.
Almost impossible.
That's insane. And so, like, I think we talk about weight cuts as something that is difficult, something that's a challenge for fighters. For female fighters, it's significantly more. So her committing to that and hitting that mark to allow her to have a little bit more size to kind of manhandle her opponent, it was insane.
If you watched if any of you guys have watched the McGregor Forever, you can just tell that those weight cuts are fucking brutal.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us to our next point. So there aren't any fights that are going to be on next week, unfortunately. So we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about this card, but don't worry, there will be a podcast next week. We're going to talk about McGregor Forever. We have both watched it in its entirety. It's not very long, it's 4 episodes, but if you haven't watched it yet, check it out on Netflix. We're going to be talking about it next week, so make sure you watch it before we spoil everything for you. But yeah, his weight cut process is insane.
Yeah.
Like looking at how weak he is, like having to be helped out of a bed.
Yep.
Like towels covered, just completely drenched, and inability to even do anything, looking like a fragment of his normal energetic self. Like, I'd imagine that, but I feel like for women it's so much harder because the weight is concentrated differently.
Yeah.
Like, you can't cut weight from your tits. Nope. It doesn't work.
You got a booty.
And, like, yeah, if you've got junk in the trunk and if you have breasticles, then what are you going to do? You can't cut those.
You got birthing hips.
Yes, you can't cut those. So that cut, those 20 pounds has got to come from somewhere, and there isn't a lot for that to come from. But somehow, Mackenzie Dern, I don't think it was a 20-pound cut, but it was a pretty noticeable size difference between her and Hill.
She looked good, too. There was I saw a picture on the interwebs. I think it was the Facegram. But it was like showed like her fights, like what she previously looked like, and then what she looked like now. And whatever she did, it worked.
Yeah, definitely looks a lot healthier, a lot stronger.
Yeah.
I mean, even so to the point where what you were talking about with that throw, where she quite literally threw Angela Hill so far across her body
that she ended up on bottom.
Put herself in a bad spot because she was so much stronger. So I think that's something, obviously, as we move towards a scenario where we have her going up against higher caliber fighters, those are little tiny mistakes that we're going to want to clean up. But of course, it's her first fight at that size. Yeah. She's never been that strong in the ring before, so that's something, or the octagon before.
And you could tell too that she was like, "This is like new."
She was like, "Oh, I can throw people with little to no effort." Weird.
And like I love judo. One of my buddies growing up, his dad was an Olympian judo Olympian. His sister was like a nationally ranked in judo, and so I like grew up around it. So I like the shit that they go through and the shit that they can do is like crazy. So I love seeing it be used in the octagon. Like you look at like Ronda Rousey, she was a judo Olympian, and it just like it works.
Yeah, I mean that ability to get someone down, and in what is not a non-traditional way, right? From a non-traditional stance, that you can get in close like that, put your leg behind them, step and throw them across your leg, or use your body, just shift and pivot and throw them that way. Whereas traditionally we've seen wrestlers going for the single leg takedown, the double leg takedown, where that opens them up. Judo kind of gives you that ability of you're already kind of in a semi-defensive position when you're making that throw, so there's not as much risk.
Yeah, you're using your opponent's momentum really against them.
And that saves you from potentially eating, as we saw for Ben Askren, a massive knee to the fucking dome right off the bat, right? The single leg and double leg takedown can be very effective, but it also leaves you open to the dangerous, the knees, the kicks. And if you miss, it's a lot of energy expended to explode across the ring like that. Whereas judo, you're already close up. And especially to your point where with the Muay Thai, you want to kind of be in that clinching scenario if you're Hill, right? So you clinch up, you hold back behind the head, and that just allowed Dern to just toss her, a ragdoller.
Yeah.
And so that was
and she looked bigger than her, like, too. Yeah, like, she had the leverage. Yeah. Like, she was, like, taller. I didn't really realize how small Angela Hill was.
Which is crazy because they're the same weight, theoretically, right? At weigh-in day. But that all comes into the cut. That all comes into the cut. By the time she rehydrated, I think there was honestly a 10 to 15 pound difference.
No, I think I was listening to like was it Cormier? Whoever was announcing, I think Cormier was.
Not Cormier.
It was Bisping.
It was Bisping, and it was Felder, and it was Cruz.
Yeah, like they even said like like she looked like she put on like 15 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, and it was definitely like pure muscle. Yeah, absolutely insane.
She was jacked.
Yeah, she was scary in there. Led to a great fight, led to a great result for her. Exactly what you're looking for here.
It might be one of the fights of the year.
It honestly, like, I was shocked. I think the only thing that prevents me from fight of the year
10?
was like,
no, it wasn't the fight of the top,
right?
Like, but like top 10, which is still like, I mean, how many fights are there?
Yeah, for me the problem is that it was a little less competitive than you would want for a fight of the year. You want a little more back and forth.
Yeah, but the one thing that you like can put into it is like Angela Hill has that like they both had that dog. Like they took X-rays after, and they're the dogging them.
Yeah,
like Angela Hill, There was so many times that Angela Hill could have just like
Giving up.
just been like, I'm done.
Right?
And,
She
like, covered up.
One of the craziest defenses that I saw against the armbar was her using her legs to trap that hand so that it couldn't be extended out. That's an incredible amount of strength there. And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from her. And she did fight an amazing defensive game. What I think makes this a better fight is the context. So, like, we know that these fighters are one-dimensional. Them showing more dimensions than they've shown in the past, in my mind, makes it greater. But when we talk fight of the year, that's where I'm a little bit like, for fight of the year for me, I don't know, the way that I would categorize a fight of the year is take a random person, have them watch it, and if they can realize that it's an amazing fight.
Yeah. Whereas
this one, you'd be like, this was just an ass beating. But then, like, you don't realize the context of, oh, this is one of the world's best jiu-jitsu practitioners going against someone who has theoretically had no ground game up to this point.
Yeah.
And that person's holding their own defensively. Mm-hmm. The context, I think, adds a ton to it. Fight of the year, it's one of my favorite fights. I would say it's one of my favorite fights knowing the context.
Right.
But
we still have a long time to go.
We still have a long year.
Was it 291? Looks like it's going to be a fucking barn burner.
Maybe. If Dana ever actually gets people to sign those contracts.
No, 291.
Oh, yeah.
The Gaethje.
Yep. Gaethje Poirier.
Gaethje Poirier,
that
too,
does
dude.
look sick.
The whole, dude, just like, I know we're getting off topic, but just if you're sitting at home and you're like, oh, like, what would be, like, when we were talking about, like, last week, we did, like, the fucking... the car that was like, oh, what's
the dream card?
Yeah, dude. I saw this.
There's a lot of fights before.
Dude, this graphic, dude. I know. But it's Poirier, Gaethje too.
Yeah.
Then Blachowicz and
Blachowicz.
Pereira. Blachowicz and Pereira. I got Pereira right. So.
Yeah, that's bonus points, right?
Yeah. Costa and then
Eliskerov.
Ferguson Green.
Yeah.
Shaza Holland, Wonderboy and Pereira, maybe, I don't know. And then Lewis and De Lima.
Yeah, this fight's actually fucking insane.
The card is crazy, dude.
And this is crazy, like... This definitely can't be in order.
No.
Because there's no way that you put...
No, that is in order.
There's no way that Tony Ferguson is your number 3 fight.
Yeah, that's...
Over Paulo Costa? Over... I mean, I guess, but even over Stephen Thompson, that's a
Well, this one has a different one. This one has... It's just like the Costa and Ferguson switched.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just a graphic, if that's like the...
But that does look insane. That's way...
No, that's
way
a crazy
down.
fucking... It's in July. It's fight week.
Yeah, that's way down the road. I mean, even... I'm a little sad that Aspinall is coming back this early. This seems like a small event for him to be on.
Is it in London, though?
It is at London.
No,
okay, never mind. This is London. It's UFC Fight Night at London.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes way more sense now. That's what I wanted him back at.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. That's going to be a double title fight. UFC 290 stacked, too.
Right.
Like, you got Volkanovski, Rodriguez.
We're in for a treat, dude.
Moreno versus Pantoja. Whitaker versus Duplessis.
Dude,
Dan Hooker fighting. This is going to be in New Zealand.
We're in a situation where
it's in
we
Vegas.
could end the year with a McGregor. Like, we could end the year with McGregor in December.
Mm-hmm.
And then the month before that in November in Madison Square Garden with fucking John Jones. Right? So you're gonna like the next like couple of months coming up are like huge for fucking fight fans. Yeah. If you're like a nerdo, if you're like a cash dude, like it's like fucking fire. We'll be spending so much money.
I'm actually kind of stoked. This is a weird one to call out, but if I'm looking ahead, at 290, because 290 is stacked too as we've been going on. You got Bo Nickel fighting.
Yeah.
You have Sean Brady, Jack Della Maddalena, 2 of the young up-and-coming guys in welterweight. That's an amazing fight.
Great fight.
But one of the ones that I'm super excited for is it's the
Robbie
end of
Lawler,
Robbie Lawler's final fight. On top of that, Cameron Simon, another up-and-coming bantamweight. But the light heavyweight bout that's at the bottom here, Jimmy Crute and Alonzo Menafield, these two fought to a draw last time.
Mm-hmm.
Having them run it back, I think, is going to be amazing. It's also weird that they put so many Aussies on this card, and it's not in Australia. But also, like, the Moreno fight was supposed to take place when they opened the Institute in Mexico. So I'm a little shocked about that one, too.
And
that's when they scheduled it.
And then they said September 18th was what Lupe...
Godinez.
Yeah, said. She was like something about September 18th.
Yeah. It's a shame that Moreno doesn't get a chance to grace that. But obviously that's a fight that needs to happen to move that division on. So I get it. But in Vegas seems kind of disappointing for the people, like the card you've lined up.
Yeah, but there's so many Mexican fighters that are coming up.
Yeah, I know. It'll be a great card.
No, yeah.
It'll be a great card. But back to talking about UFC Fight Night. We got off topic crazy right there, but it was fun. The next fight, so this one poses a really interesting question. So Edmund Shabazian lost again. He is, of his last 5 fights, he has 4 losses. It's just not looking like a good spot for him, and he got his ribs broken by Anthony Hernandez. Completely.
Not him.
Yeah, no, he broke his ribs. Yeah, Shabazian broke his ribs. I think so.
No, I thought that was
Fiallo?
No, that was
Mahashate?
No, Kosh.
Oh, right. Kosh. Yeah, or Koshi, something like that. Yeah, I thought Shabazian said something too. I thought he had got hurt at the end.
He might have.
But the second round was a 10-8 because he looked bad. He won the first round, but he got 10-8 in the second. I think he got hurt.
I know that.
Koshi broke his ribs.
Yeah, because he did like the front kick.
The front kick
put
right
him against
to the
it,
rib
and then he went.
Yeah, and that was just kind of it for him.
Body shot.
Which was a shame. But Shabazian, if we look at, so he's 12-4. He's 25 years old. 10 knockouts in his 12 wins. Is it weird to say that it feels like it's over?
I don't know. Maybe we talked about this earlier. PFL.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel with the UFC, what is he going to do? Because if we look, so he's a middleweight. So if we look at the UFC middleweight rankings, right? Middleweight's stacked. Right now, he's not even top 15.
Yeah, he shouldn't be.
He shouldn't be, right? But I mean, this was a guy that they expected to be right up in the guts of the.
He couldn't even sniff out these guys' jock straps, dude.
And that's kind of crazy thinking about where he was, and what he was kind of hyped up to be, and it hasn't manifested
right now. I mean, maybe. But every every dog has their day, right? So and you've seen fighters go through slumps.
Yeah, but this
Poirier went through a pretty good slump. Maybe he needs to move.
Yeah, I think maybe the next is if middleweight's not working for him.
Does he go up? Does he go down?
At 25, I think you still have the possibility of cutting down. Does he look at welterweight as an option? But welterweight's just as stacked right now. Welterweight's got a lot of competition on that lower end.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, if we look at these, let's look at, Jesus, it literally doesn't stop. There's names all the way down. So just to read welterweight, just for funsies. Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Bilal Muhammad, Hamzat Shemaev, Gilbert Burns, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Stephen Thompson, Jeff Neal, Sean Brady, Vicente Luque, Neil Magny, Michael Chiesa, Ian Machado Gary, Jack Della Maddalena, and Michel Pereira. That's an absolute killer's list.
Yeah, any one of those guys could be up there.
And it's crazy to think. Oh, and to add to this, I don't know if you saw this or not, but Paul Krieg, we talked about last week of fighters that have the potential to change divisions.
Yeah.
And we talked about him maybe going up. Mm-hmm. He's actually coming down to middleweight.
Is he?
Yeah, which is crazy. So, yeah, if we look at middleweight, Pereira's moving up, but you're getting Paul Krieg in, right? So it's not obviously a 1-to-1 swap, but you get a top 10 guy coming from the division above you down, who's an accomplished wrestler. I think he adds even more to that middleweight.
And then
picture.
if Kamzat Shemaev moves up, like that, dude.
And then that causes a huge cluster in middleweight.
We're just thinking about going up.
And then you have
guys are thinking about going up.
Paulo Costa fighting Alaskarov, who's not technically ranked, but he's one of the guys that they're like, yeah, he's one of the top fighters in the division. So there is very little room here in the UFC roster for someone who's underperforming to that degree. And
I mean, he might just be a fight night filler, dude.
And that's crazy to think, like, from how he was hyped from Ultimate Fighter, called the Golden Boy, looked very much the part, and just never delivered. And it's kind of disappointing that we're talking about this at this point, but I think he's got to get something going. I think he's got to try and push for one more fight. Yeah. I don't know what his remaining contract is, but he's got to get one more fight. He's got to get one win under his belt. He's got to fight desperate.
Right.
He's got to be willing to take whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what his contract is. I mean, they could fucking, I don't know, they can nullify it. I'd be like, good, dude.
I mean, you could nullify due to injury if he is hurt, but, like, it's weird. I don't know. Doesn't put me in a good spot. Speaking of disappointing fights, Emily Ducote, Lupi Godinez. Lupi just controlled the fight the whole time. There was really nothing to say there. It was very boring, very smart from Godinez. There was no point where she was really in trouble. They gave, two of the judges gave Ducote round 3, but that's because Godinez could literally just lay off the pedal. Like, it was just a very meh.
There was like one that was like a toss-up, I think.
If we look at this, there was one. If there was any controversy,
no, like one round. I remember like listening to the fight, like talk about that.
I think it was round 3.
Yeah, well,
because there was a toss-up with them.
It could have been. I think she did. I think the second half of like round 2. I think she did. So it was more of like she like stepped up on the gas, but it was like you said. I think that was more of it was Lupe. Just knowing that she had it kind of in the bag.
Just kind of coasting. Which, like, it's smart, but I hate to see it.
I'm pretty sure there was a point where Emily almost had her in a fucking, almost subbed her.
Maybe. I honestly, like, this fight did not hold my attention.
I
could, like, okay, that makes sense, but I could barely watch it. Like, it just was not entertaining to me.
It should be a no contest anyway, because like you said, it was...
Oh, no, that was later. That was earlier. That was one of the early fights.
Was it?
That was Natalia Silva. That was the fight where I have some qualms, and honestly, there's a decent case for that being overruled as a no contest due to unfair help. We'll touch on that in a bit. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. Let's touch on it now because I'm fired up right now.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
So with this fight, we're jumping all the way to the Natalia Silva Victoria Leonardo fight. Natalia Silva lands a huge fucking knockout, and then afterwards says it was Jesus. That's fucking unfair, dude. You can't just have Jesus fucking Christ come in here, knock a bitch out, and then just peace out. That's a no contest. It's not fair. So I apologize to Victoria Leonardo for that bullshit. But how the fuck are we pulling divine intervention in the middle of the goddamn octagon and nobody fucking says anything?
Yeah.
It's a goddamn outrage.
I called the Crusades. There's nothing to say about it.
This is a goddamn outrage. I won't stand for it. Just because Brazil built a giant fucking statue to frown on all the poor people, they get God's help in the middle of the fucking octagon. It's bullshit. And I won't stand for it. UFC, I demand a fucking investigation. Either God prefers Natalia Silva, which is bullshit, or there's some shenanigans afoot, and I want this fucking solved.
Is that a PED? Is Jesus Christ a PED?
I'm pretty sure that's performance-enhancing drugs, dude. It's not even fair.
What are you on? I'm on Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm on straight Jesus. That's so fucking unfair, dude. How do you walk into a fight, knock someone out, and be like, it was Jesus?
Not my training, not my coaches. Not the mitts.
But, like, it's one thing to say, like, all things are possible through Christ who strengthens me. It's another thing to say that Jesus knocked a woman out. Like, I'm pretty sure that's domestic abuse. Yeah. Like, what the fuck, dude? Let me charge JC with some crimes real quick. It's an absolute travesty.
It is 2023.
That's true. Equal rights, equal fights. Yeah, and who knows how he defines. I mean, realistically, if we look at God is theoretically genderless. Our construct of God can't if we're all made in the image of God, as Christianity would want us to believe, then God can't be solely male. Otherwise, I don't know, man. He didn't use it, so if you don't use it, you lose it, bro.
He's a Ken doll.
Yeah, that's how he avoids temptation. He's a fucking Ken doll, dude. Oh, my God. Fucking absolute ridiculousness. So after, last week we had the qualms with the commission not putting the fighter back in position after the illegal head kick. I think we need a serious investigation into the divine intervention here in the middle of fucking UFC Vegas. But overall, seriously good knockout. You don't really see women's knockouts a ton. And that one was very powerful. Yeah. It's been like, they do happen, but it's mostly like TKO. It's not like lights out, body crumple. Like, that was pretty impressive overall, regardless of whether or not there was some interference from the big man upstairs. And I don't mean Dana White coming down and slapping another woman, but
Oh my God.
I'll never let it die. But overall, I do think, good fight out of her. Exciting prospect for the division, coming in and definitely putting a stamp on that one. And I belong here. So that's great for her moving forward. Looking at the rest of the fights here, we're going back to the top and back down. So we're talking about Joaquin Buckley now. What was really interesting is he was losing, according to the fight, according to the cards. He was losing round 1, which I agree with. Tony Weeks had Joaquin Buckley winning that first round. I think it was close, but I think Fiallo had a little bit more volume. And then Buckley wins by KO, TKO, late in the second round there. And this is a guy who really needed to start to get himself back on track. A guy who's had a few fights canceled, but a very exciting fighter. Have you seen the clip of him knocking the guy out who caught his kick?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely insane. If you haven't seen that, that was against... Oh, that's a while back now, I think. Maybe not. But, I don't remember who it was against. I thought the guy had dyed hair, but maybe his picture's been updated in UFC since then. But since he had some big fights, he fought Duraev, TKO due to doctor stoppage. But he fought Imavov and lost, and fought...
And, for that to happen, you have to really fuck somebody up.
Yeah. But from a perspective of him moving forward, I think that was against Kasangani. Yeah, that would have had to have been, because that was in the UFC. That's his only KO against an opponent that is also black, because I know it was a black guy that he knocked out. But he's fought Kevin Holland. He's lost to Kevin Holland, but that's not a bad one to have.
This was his first fight.
Yeah, it was his first fight against Kevin Holland, which, UFC must have been sleeping on Kevin Holland or something. Yeah. Or just really built up Buckley. But he's kind of, it's weird for him. Where do we go from here? So he's 16-6. He's 29. He probably wants to get one more fight in this year. His kicks are honestly just deadly. This was a head kick knockout. He had the head kick knockout before. The spinning back kick knockout, if I'm being corrected here by this. But coming in, he really hasn't started to crack. If he can't get past Chris Curtis, who admittedly is a great fighter, but is serving as kind of that gatekeeper at the number 14 rank, what do you do here? Do you try and, he doesn't really deserve a fight above Chris Curtis.
Maybe a rematch?
Maybe but it's too soon. He just fought him. In 2022.
Yeah, but if he gets another fight, if he gets another fight soon, by the end of the year, it would be you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's...
Maybe, I don't know.
It's tough, because I think maybe he could fight Muniz, who is also coming off of a loss. So I think he would have to kind of fight down. Yeah. Chris Curtis, I think, does have to fight down, but I don't think Joaquin Buckley is the opponent. Brendan Allen just came off a win, I believe. Yep, Brendan Allen just beat Muniz. So I think top 15, you could maybe make an argument for it. This is a guy who wins in strong fashion. But I don't think that losing to Buckley is the end-all, be-all. And Imavov is the number 12, right? So he's lost against the 12 and 14. So realistically, maybe the 13 or the 15 is the next matchup for him. I think as a fighter, he's exciting.
He's going to be must-watch television.
Yeah, I think he's moving into that territory for me. Just the highlight. He is a human highlight reel. Yeah. And same for me with like Kevin Holland. Like I don't think Holland's an amazing fighter. That karate style doesn't play well really in the UFC. It hasn't since Lyoto Machida. And then even still, Lyoto Machida got knocked the fuck out a few times, really ugly.
Oh, McGregor did a really good job at it.
Yeah, but that's just, I don't know that his isn't true karate. He has low hands, but it's not really karate.
It's more of a stance.
Right. His stance is a karate stance, but it's not, I don't know. He's more of a boxer, he's closer to Muay Thai. He's a kickboxer. Yeah. He's not really full karate. But Joaquin Buckley's got amazing athleticism. I will say my concern for him is how skinny his legs are. He's another one of those guys like huge upper body and no legs.
Like a John Jones.
Yeah, leg kicks might do him in. And even like submissions game, because what's going to give him problems, like what I bet, I haven't seen the fight against Chris Curtis, but I'm willing to bet Chris Curtis big leg kicker.
And that is
big ground.
That is the like karate stance like kryptonite.
Yeah,
the leg kick, because you just leave them out there, dude.
Mm-hmm. And if you're that, like, the benefit to a Muay Thai stance is that you're heavy on your back foot, not your front foot, and that allows you to check those kicks. So like,
yeah, I feel like a Muay Thai stance, more like you're more like straight up.
Yeah, you are straight up and you're squared off, but your legs are very much like the weight is centered back and you're bouncing on the ball of that front foot.
Yeah.
And that allows you to check the kicks. But with him, I think he's going to have trouble with wrestlers until he can show a little bit better game. I think he's going to, like, middleweight is killers too. Like, it's just, these divisions are such killers. But it's okay to have guys that are never going to be champions. They're still great fighters.
Yeah.
And he is, to me, kind of looks like he could fall into that category. Very entertaining, though, and definitely one of the stronger fights on the card. Mm-hmm. The next one is personal bit of sadness for me here. Michael Johnson looked so good.
So good.
Until he didn't, which is pretty much the...
He just got caught.
Yeah, and it's weird because it didn't look like it was that heavy of a punch. And
it was perfect.
Yeah, and Diego Ferreira's not known for being a knockout guy. He's a wrestler.
I don't think it was a power punch. I think it was
just perfect
placement.
Yeah,
right on the button.
And what's kind of weird though, if we're gonna argue anything here, just real quick, I don't understand how Sal D'Amato scored Johnson losing round 1. I thought Johnson looked fast. He looked quick. He landed way more punches. Yeah. Don't understand where that one came from. Weirdly, a 10-9. Ultimately, it didn't matter because Johnson got starched. And
maybe he's playing chess too, and we're all playing checkers.
Maybe. I mean, Sal D'Amato's been around a long time. He knows better than me. But I think Johnson looked like the much, much, much better fighter who's landing at a very high rate and doing more action, doing more pressing, and then all of a sudden, lights out.
Yep.
It was instant, and honestly a little bit ugly. I was actually kind of pissed. So between this fight and
Fajeda's old.
Yeah.
He's like 38.
And this fight, I was mad because the extra shot that got thrown in there. That one kind of pissed me off. But also at the same time, the Fiallo and Buckley one, where the ref showed little to no effort to get in there after the guy was clearly out.
Oh, no, Johnson was clearly out before the canvas.
Well, Johnson was out, and I will give Herb Dean credit. As much as I like to hit on Herb Dean got in there, and he threw Fajeda off of him.
Yeah. Like,
literally picked him up and chucked him.
Yeah.
Which...
Fajeda just, it sounded like, because Fajeda was, like, shook. He knew that he had fucked up.
Yeah, he definitely fucked up.
And, but, like, he said that that's what he had, I guess, like, when you're in it, when you're, like, and you're drilling that.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not really thinking, like, oh, I should stop. You're thinking, like, I gotta finish.
I mean, I don't know, dude. The guy's body was rigid. His legs were crossed. He was not there. His toes were... And then when he punched him, his head bounced off of the canvas. That was ugly. I was not very happy with that. And, like, he was apologetic. He looked contrite. I still didn't love it. Still... did not love the... It's all well and good to say you're sorry, but you shouldn't be fucking hammer fisting a guy who's clearly out on the ground.
Yeah.
And Like, Herb Dean was on the other side of the octagon, and he was backpedaling when the punch landed. But he did move as quickly as he could, and only one punch landed before he threw him. But he literally threw him and was pissed. So, like, I know I give Herb Dean shit, but that was one that he was on top of. But the next fight, I think it must have been the Joaquin Buckley knockout, because that's the only other, or maybe the Shabazian one. I'll have to check when I got upset. I'll check Twitter for that when I was getting pissed off. But
you texted me.
yeah, I was really fucking heated about that, because the referees just really were not making, or he really did not make an effort. He like yelled at him, and then put an arm up, and then was just like,
well, you said that. Oh wait, it had to be because you said that he was crying because he was so upset himself, but he needs.
Yeah, that one I was mad about.
Herb Dean threw him in frustration, and then like 16 minutes later, so it was the next fight. It had to be the next fight.
Yeah,
you said just a terrible ref stoppage there. Made no effort to protect the fighter.
Yeah. It was right before Joaquin Buckley, because then he dropped the N-word real loud on air, which was something. But like, yeah, he walked over and waved a hand at Buckley, and then Buckley hit him with a follow-up shot because the ref didn't actually put himself in between. He made no effort to actually stop the follow-up shot. And then the ref had the audacity to turn around and get mad. It's like, dude, you didn't do your job. He was if the fighter is unsure.
Yeah, he's gonna finish.
But like, it sounds weird to say that. Like, it almost sounds backwards. But like, I did not like that refereeing. And then, but as a fighter, like, you have to know when a guy's out. Like, there's a difference between the knockout between Johnson, like the degree that Johnson was knocked out, like starched, lights off, no one's home.
Right.
Like, he was being helped to his stool, or held up basically by his team, and he was like, "What happened?" And then the next thing out of his mouth was, "From who?"
Yeah.
Like, he was genuinely confused at what had happened to him, which is a dangerous spot. You don't want to see somebody in. He's 22-19. He's got a lot of fights. He was on a bit of a comeback, kind of a turning point for him, late stage in the career, where I guess he was a little coin flippy, but like started to look a little bit more consistent. Really disappointing, and it's tough to say because I like
he was
Michael
talking
Johnson.
about like fighting for a belt, like he
He
was
was making really great progress, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And I think title shot was a dream.
Yeah.
But I do think
it was just him giving himself motivate, like.
Yeah.
But now
But I mean, we saw Alex Caceres kind of have this late stage in his career revival. I was hoping for the same with Michael Johnson, but I honestly, at this point, I hope it's retirement.
Yeah. Go coach.
After the damage and the shots that he took from that was ugly. Yeah. And I really hope that there's not permanent damage from that. Because that was, when you see the toes curled like that, that's pretty much a universal sign of severe brain damage. That's not good. Really not good. Moving on to slightly more positive. If we look at Slava Claus here, this is an up-and-coming nightmare in lightweight. His KO was huge. I mean, he won a performance of the night out of it. But this is Vyacheslav Borshev coming up in lightweight. So lightweight, I think there is room for him to crack into that bottom part here. Lightweight has got a pretty solid top 8. Right, there's still some killers right at the top. Right, I mean, Islam Makhachev, Charles Oliveira, although he's moving, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Beneil Dariush, Michael Chandler. Obviously, throw Conor back into that mix later this year. Mateusz Gamrot isn't going anywhere. Fiziev isn't going anywhere. Yeah, I mean, Conor might not make it back down to lightweight, but theoretically, that could be interesting. And then Matt Frivola, the steamroller, coming in at 14 now. But there's some room here for him to start looking into maybe breaking that top 15. And this is a guy with massive knockout power, as we saw against Mahashate. He's only 7-3. But if we look at, he did lose 2 on his way in, so maybe not quite. He's 2-2 coming in, so maybe pump the brakes on the big hype. But his 2 wins are by 2 big KOs, and his 2 losses are by decisions.
Yeah.
So he hasn't lost bad, but he's won real well.
Right.
So I think maybe one more fight if he can start to string things together a little bit, maybe looking top 15.
Yeah. If he gets another big KO.
Yeah, I think definitely, and especially getting a performance.
If he gets like another finish.
Yeah, I think getting a performance of the night puts him in that good spot.
He looked big too.
Yeah, he looks scary. I mean, any guy who goes by Slava Claus, that's an all-time nickname.
Yeah,
I had highlighted that just off his nickname alone. That was an excellent call by me. Sometimes when you know, right? I don't care if Dana White says if you didn't know. I didn't know, but I knew.
Yep.
And I didn't need his help to know. I knew before you, Dana. Man's name is Slava Claus. How can you not love that? I mean, I guess if you don't believe
a little
Santa.
jig.
Yeah. Yeah, the dance at the end was unreal. Dude hit all kinds of traditional Russian dances that, like, he needs to come out to, like, Rah Rah Rasputin at some point and just dance his whole way in. Unreal. My knees hurt watching that shit. That was bad. Next fight, it was Kovalchuk winning pretty solidly. I don't think there was nothing controversial there. It was just a good win. Kind of boring.
Yeah.
But you have to acknowledge when somebody does well. And this was just a bell to bell. She won. She did everything she needed to. She came in with a plan, executed the plan, did what she needed to, put her opponent away. Now, what's interesting is that she is now on a 3 fight win streak. With some interesting fights to her name. Like, if we look at some of the names, she's fought Grasso.
Did she?
Yep. She fought Grasso.
Lost in a decision.
She lost, and then she's also fought Yan Zhao.
Yep.
So she's gone up against top people in the division. So I wouldn't be shocked to see her starting to creep into that division conversation. This would be at, is this strawweight? Yeah, this is strawweight. So looking at that bottom, I mean, Angela Hill coming off a loss, her coming off a win, maybe she's sneaking up into the top 15 after that one.
Could be.
But she's fought some, like, her losses have aged well.
Yeah.
Which is always a spot you want to be as a fighter, especially one who's kind of on the older end, who's been around 16-7. What you look for is you win in convincing fashion.
Yeah, you string them together.
Yeah, and even if it's decision wins, like women's fights, we don't typically see as many finishes. That's fine, but a strong, convincing decision win, and then combined with, I mean, I don't think Angela Hill should drop out of the top 15 because that was still a great performance from her. But Kovalchuk may have an argument for sneaking in there. The Urbina fight, this was the one definitely with the broken ribs. I think Shabazian's were broken too, but whether or not, we know for a fact that Orion Koche's ribs were busted up. Unfortunately, the amazing Shenron Tattoo could not save this fight. He was put away, and he was hurt. He was hurt bad.
Yeah.
And
I don't even think he really stood a chance.
He was, according to the cards, which again, take with a grain of salt. Nope, I lied. Wrong fight. Yeah, he was losing. He got 2 10-8s in round 1. He was not winning.
And that was when I texted you. I was like, that could be a 10.
That's right. That's when you were like, that could be a 10-7 because he just didn't look competitive. I said 10-8 at the worst, and it was 2 10-8s, which is just you're not in that fight anymore.
But I think he got hurt early.
I think so too. I think the body shots really compromised him. And for Urbina, this is big, right? So coming back from a fight with Brian Battle, which again, if we're talking about losses aging well, seeing how Brian Battle fought last time, Brian Battle came out and got a huge KO last week.
Yep.
Now that loss has kind of aged a little bit better because Brian Battle is better than we thought he might have been. Mm-hmm. And so then that puts Urbina squarely in a position now with a good win over a good fighter into a spot where it's like, okay, he's got some skill here. He's got 4 finishes, 2 by knockout, 2 by submission, and 2 first rounds. So this is a guy who's got a little bit of balance there. Definitely someone to look forward to in the future. I think if you're Cochet, you get healed up and you hope for a better result last time.
Yeah.
But again, if Urbina does well, this is another situation of those losses aging well because he's fought Rowe, and Rowe has done very, very well.
Yep.
So that fight, that loss on his record, I think, is aged well. And then maybe Urbina, the same deal. But 2 losses, I think he bounces back. Hopefully just get healthy, younger guy. So just get healthy, come back, and we'll see what you got next fight. I tweeted this out But here's an interesting fact you may not have known. Ilir Latifi has been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He has one no contest. Do you know what it's for?
No.
He drove a guy so hard into the side of the ring that the ring fucking collapsed.
Huh.
Absolutely amazing.
He's a stocky.
He's a big boy. And what's funny is they were talking about him being short, and he's 5'10".
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I get it. Heavyweights are enormous. But, like, they were doing him dirty. Like, he was this, like, really, really small guy, and, like, he's 5'10".
He looked small.
He did look small against Nascimento because Nascimento's 6'4". Right? Like, instead of calling Latifi small, how about one time for the short kings, you call the tall guy tall?
Yeah.
Like, he's above average height. He's a big dude. He's not a guy, like, if you saw him walking around on the street, you would never in your right mind call him small.
No.
So just absolutely hilarious to me that they called him small. But it was a split decision. I didn't think that it was even a split decision. I'm kind of curious looking at the scorecards how it went. So all three judges scored round 1 to Nascimento, which I think is fair. All three judges scored round 2 to Latifi, which I thought was fair. So I guess the split, it was only Jacob Montalvo who scored round 3 for Latifi. I just don't think that's right.
Yeah.
I think both guys had it was a good fight, but it was kind of weird. Like, it's not a fight that you would expect out of heavyweights.
Right.
Like, it was a much more...
You really expect
tactical
heavyweights to
fight.
go the distance.
No, and neither of them really looked particularly gassed, which I guess is kind of a pleasant surprise for heavyweights.
Because we talked about that.
Yeah, like we've talked, heavyweights looked bad in round 3, and neither of them really looked bad, but I did think Nascimento just looked a little bit better. I do think Nascimento has an opportunity here if we're looking at heavyweight.
If I remember the fight correctly, I feel like Nascimento kind of like took control of the third round, like bullied Latifi a little bit.
That's what I thought too. I thought it was pretty clear.
It looked to me like like Nascimento, like Latifi might have thought that it was closer than it actually was going into the third round, and Nascimento just kind of like kept on the gas.
So I guess, like, if you want to get into the analytics of the fight a little bit, right? So 76 strikes for both guys.
Yeah.
Latifi was the much more precise striker. However,
More takedowns.
he had the takedowns, but those were the round 2. The significant strikes are not even close.
Right.
So it's 68 significant strikes. So Nascimento is hitting harder. So, and that's where the 49 significant strikes, like, yeah, you're throwing accuracy, but if you're not throwing heat,
Yeah.
that's, like, damage is the number one category.
If I remember correctly, like Latifi kind of just like, I don't think he was was he moving his head? Like,
Not really.
he kind of just like stood there.
Yeah,
was,
he
like,
took
taking-
51 shots to the head.
Yeah.
51 shots to the head. That's not a good way to win. Even in round 2, he still took quite a bit. But round 3, like, if you look at just striking, right? We look at just striking, 15 headshots, 2 body shots, 2 legs. To Latifi, 7 headshots, 2 body, 1 leg. So he got outstruck pretty hard. Round 1, he definitely got outstruck and was working the body of Nascimento, which is an okay way to start. I think with big guys, it is smart to work the body, test that cardio, see how it is. Round 2, that was working out for him. That's where not a lot of strikes thrown, but that's because he had the takedowns.
Yep. He took it to the ground.
Yeah, and he won that round.
But Nascimento did a good job at neutralizing his ground game.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I think, like, round 1 is clearly Nascimento.
Like staying against the cage, making sure that he didn't get, like, too much of an advantage.
Yeah. I mean, he only got 2 strikes on the ground.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of... Like, even still, 2 strikes on the ground, 9 strikes at distance. Nascimento, even in round 2, outstruck him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, the takedowns and the positioning have value as well. But you'd want to see a little bit more here to kind of push that.
Yeah.
Still won the round, but round 3, I don't think it was as... I don't see how it was split. I think Nascimento fought well.
Yeah.
A little bit more polished.
Yeah,
and...
he didn't do as bad of a job as Demopoulos did, just leaving her head. Like that tweet, texted, she just like stood there, Didn't no head movement. Just like bop, 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 bop. It was like a speed bag.
I don't mind if I do. I will be used as a punching tool. It's totally fine. Yeah, so let's take a look. So 148, if we're going to hop back real quick. So to give Kovalevich a little bit more credit, 148 strikes, dude. She was teeing off at 94 strikes to the head over the course of the fight.
I'm pretty sure
Absolutely
it was either her or
asinine.
Dern. I think like her most. I think it was her. I think her most was like 82.
Yeah, so like clearly just putting the hurt on. But yeah, that's you got to get your head off the center line.
Yeah.
If you want to win fights in the UFC, get your head off the center line. I don't care how tough your chin is.
Yeah.
You can't just eat headshots with no consequence. It's just not a thing you can do. On to our second to last fight we're going to talk about because we already talked about Natalie Jesus Silva there. But Chase Hooper, Nick Fiore. This was a huge fight for Chase Hooper. So a couple things here. First off, I never really have said his name with the nickname in the middle, and now it makes more sense. So his nickname is The Dream. But if you think about it, it's Chase the Dream.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking he was referring to himself as the Dream. No, it's like an invocation. Chase the Dream, right?
He's going after it.
Right, not like he is the Dream, which is how I've always interpreted it, so kind of fun fact. But also, he just moved up to lightweight. So moving from
good.
feather to lightweight, he looked really, really good. If we look at total strikes, 217 total strikes thrown in 3 rounds. We've talked about output. This is insane. On top of that, he had a takedown. And he had a submission attempt.
He almost got him.
Yeah, and he had 149 significant strikes.
They beat him up.
Yeah, I don't know if the call was like really not paying attention, but I feel like 149 significant strikes might actually be a record at lightweight.
Maybe.
That's insane volume. Like, I'm curious. I'd have to go in and start digging through the numbers, but 149 significant strikes and 217 total strikes is insane volume. Like, it's not the same thing as Merab, where Merab combined record-breaking strikes with record-breaking takedowns in the same fight, which is unreal.
Yeah.
But the volume here is crazy. The cardio is crazy. And one thing that I didn't really like is, so Chase Hooper's a really tall guy. He's 6'1". Especially for lightweight, that's super. I mean, lightweight, that's a little bit more within reason, but at featherweight, a 6'1" featherweight is enormous. Right. 6'1" still really, really tall for featherweight, where you see guys kind of like in that 5'6" to 5'10" range typically. So 6'1" does have quite a bit of length. What I didn't like was them calling his striking unconventional. The way that he was throwing his elbows in space. The reason why it looks unconventional is he was throwing Muay Thai clinch elbows, which, like, for someone that's that long, they've got to kind of loop out a little bit to compensate for the fact that the limb is so damn long.
Right.
So yeah, they're a little bit loopy with what he's throwing, but what they were landing with crazy precision. He was bringing him in from all different angles, getting around the guard of Fior. But why they looked funny is because Fior wasn't clinched up.
Yeah.
So he was doing a tie clinch elbow without there being a tie clinch. He didn't need to clinch up because the guy was just like, I'm just going to cover my face and pray that one of these elbows doesn't sneak through.
Right. When you look like walk around looking like fucking Gumby, dude. Like,
yeah, I mean, he is literally Mr. Fantastic. Those limbs are coming from all directions. Right. But this is really what you were hoping for seeing Chase Hooper, right? Like, this is a kid who was supposed to be the next thing.
Right. I'm going to see what he does.
I think
moving forward
with lightweight. So if we take a look, I don't think it's time to even talk top 15 with him yet because he's still got to put himself back on track. But since coming in, he lost to Caceres again. That's a fight that I think has aged well. He beat Tamer, lost to Caceres. He beat Barrett, lost to Peterson. He beat Colares, lost to Garcia. So he was really coin flippy, right? And then you have
Garcia.
Like, right, Steve Garcia's looked good too.
Right, that's when you won those losses. Like, it wasn't really that bad.
And even against Peterson, who's a veteran, his 3 losses here don't actually look bad with time. But now that he's moved up a division, yes, he beat a guy who's new. That's not enough to really This is a guy who's on a second fight, 0-2 since coming in, which sucks because he's a Massachusetts guy. So hopefully he can turn that around. But with Chase Hooper now, where he's at, I think he's going to be kind of a bit of a problem for that lightweight. He is still a very capable fighter, and those fights, like I said, I think he looked way better at lightweight than he looked at feather.
Right.
And so again, lightweight, if I were to make an argument right now, lightweight is the one division where anything outside of the top 10, it's not quite super impressive guys.
Right.
I wouldn't hate.
You can make it. You can like sneak in there.
You could theoretically sneak in there. I wouldn't hate him on name alone matching up with a guy 11 or 12 to 15. He was a featherweight before,
right?
Yep.
And was he? Yeah, he's not gonna be.
Like he's not
gonna beat Volkanovski.
Not beating Volkanovski.
But he's so big, like because like the tallest guy, like the tall guy in that division is Holloway.
Yeah, and Holloway's not even 6 foot.
Right.
Right. So like he was a giant for the division. Although I want to say that there's a few guys in here who are actually sneaky tall. But yeah, like even still, does there either one fight outside of the top 15 or lightweight? I think the bottom part of the top 15 is the weakest.
Right.
Lightweight out of all the divisions has what I would think to be, other than heavyweight, because heavyweight's a fucking garbage bin. Outside of heavyweight, lightweight is the one where you want to break in. So I think he can see an opportunity there. Obviously, at the top of the division, it's killers,
right,
but they're at the end of careers.
Yeah.
Realistically, how much longer does... Well, I mean, Oliveira's already left. How much longer does Poirier, Gaethje, Chandler, Dariush even?
Probably like 3 years.
Right. And this is a young kid who's, like, what, 20?
Yeah, but you gotta think that maybe, like, Volkanovski's going to move up, I would assume.
Yeah, but Volkanovski's no spring chicken either.
Right.
I don't think he's going to stay long. So, like, this is a chance where he could have a very kind of, like, you don't need to push this prospect.
No.
I think pushing him was the wrong call. I don't think he needs to
fight
fight again
this
year.
They started pushing him when there wasn't that many names. Like, like people like Dustin Poirier wasn't who Dustin Poirier is now.
Well, I mean, it was only a couple of years ago. I mean, Dustin Poirier was pretty... That was the Conor fight.
When did Hooper get...
So, Chase Hooper... What the fuck? Why did you go to Brendan Allen? Piece of shit. All right. Not Brendan Allen. Sorry, the computer. Let me be clear. I'm not calling Brendan Allen a piece of shit. My bad. Yelling at my technology for not behaving. So he debuted in 2019 at 18 years old. So 2019, that was Poirier versus Conor 2, right? Because 2020 was Poirier versus Conor.
No.
2021 was Poirier Conor. Oh yeah, it was 2021. That was
right. No, that's not exactly what you know what I mean.
I mean, he fought Nurmagomedov in 2019. He was fighting for the belt.
Yeah, but he had just moved up.
Yeah. He had just moved up from featherweight. You're right. Okay. Or did Holloway fight at lightweight? No, Holloway's always been a featherweight guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he fought Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah. But I mean, he had fought Gaethje at that point. Anthony Pettis.
A lot of those guys were
Eddie Alvarez. Fucking Miller. I can't
so
believe
I guess I'll redact that. I mean, he wasn't like...
He did lose to Michael Johnson, though. But if we look at that was like peak Nurmagomedov like era.
Yeah.
I think they were still
but
looking
they weren't
for that,
looking
like
the
next
they were looking for like a sexy star.
Yeah, and I think the idea of him being like the next wave of MMA fighter who's super well-rounded, who can punch hard and who can wrestle.
Yeah.
A guy who's trained in MMA his whole life, not coming from one discipline into MMA. I think definitely he was pushed hard and maybe pushed too
because he won
early.
tough, didn't he?
Yeah, or he won Contender Series, not tough. Yeah. So he's I don't know, Dana White's ego. Oh. Like one's got his name on it, the other doesn't.
Yeah, because Sean O'Malley was a Contender Series, was he?
Yeah.
Where he just like won one fight and then he won a contract.
Yeah, so like Contender Series I think is more like a show me what you got type thing, whereas Tough is like a reality show.
Yeah.
And like yeah. I mean it's different. I actually think Contender Series at this point is probably the better way to go for fighters. Like we've seen more fighters.
Is that the one where they go around looking for people and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna set up a fight for you. Like, show me what you got."
Yep. And like there have been a lot of the fights we talked about recently. A lot of the young guys are coming out of Contender Series, not the Ultimate Fighter.
Right. Well, the Ultimate Fighter is like only like really one guy gets a contract.
Yeah, and that's. But I mean, if we look at the earlier seasons, a lot of those guys in the like, especially the first season.
Well, then they would go back. Well, because they
took
looking,
a ton of those guys because they were looking to expand the roster at that point. It's not like that anymore. I feel like the roster expansion comes through,
and they do it like a weird way.
Yeah, like the Ultimate Fighter. If we look back at season 1, some of the names on like I mean, obviously you have both guys winning.
Well, it was Forrest Griffin
and
Bonner.
Stephan Bonner, rest in peace. But if we look at all the people that came out of one, so people that got, like Bobby Southworth got a contract out of that. Like not the same contract as Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonner, but like these guys
they didn't win the
fought.
prize money either.
Sam Hoger fought, Mike Swick fought, Luden Kincaid fought, Josh Kochek, Diego Sanchez was a huge fighter coming out of the Ultimate Fighter, although he was the winner for the middleweights. Kenny Florian.
Well, all three of those guys.
Yeah, Nathan Quarry, Chris Levin, Alex Karalexis, Chris Sanford. Like, they really ended up taking pretty much everyone. What's absolutely wild out of this is that if we look at, like, Diego Sanchez was the 3rd pick, Forrest Griffin was the 5th pick after Stephan Bonner. And, like, that's pretty wild to me. But in the earlier seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, they definitely took a lot more guys.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily the case now. I think it's more you got to come up through the contender series.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, another contender series guy, Temba Garimbo. His fight against Takashi Sato was a very, very strong victory for him. And if you had a chance to listen to the interview, or even if you didn't, there's some really interesting information out there about him. He won every round 10-9, by the way, just throwing that out there. But very dominant fight, very well-rounded fighter. But after his first fight, which was a loss, like everyone that he knew and cared about cut ties with him.
Is that like a Zimbabwe thing, or like they were like?
I don't know. Is that where he's from?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't recognize the flag. I'm bad at flag recognition. But after his loss to Fletcher, he was submitted, and pretty much everyone turned his back on him. Didn't have a place to be. Didn't have food. Didn't have money. And of all people, Colby Covington took care of him, which is kind of weird. I can understand, like, Fletcher didn't do well, or, like, Fletcher fought and beat Garimbo, but before that, he was 0-2. But, I mean, against Semmelsberger, that one's not terrible. Taking Semmelsberger decision and not getting knocked the fuck out is impressive. But back to Garimbo. Like, being able to get that win back, be able to train, be in a position where he's set up for at least one more fight.
Right. He's got the 50 G's.
Did he get it? No, he didn't win 50 G's.
Yeah, that's how much he wins when he wins the fight, I'm pretty sure.
50? No way.
No?
No. So, like, this is another thing, actually, totally random that I wanted to bring up. But, so I was looking at the Francis Ngannou Dana White beef. And when you look at some of the figures that have come out as a result of this, it's actually insane how little fighters are being paid. If you were to,
well, that's the whole thing that, like, fucking what's his face goes off about.
Ngannou?
No, fucking Jake Paul.
Yeah, I mean, but okay. Let me throw a name and an event out here. Record-breaking fight in the O2 Arena in London. Paddy Pimblett. How much do you think Paddy got paid for that fight?
Like $45,000.
Not even.
What, did he get, 30?
He got a 12K appearance and a 12K win.
Oh.
For $24,000. That's for someone who, as big of a personality as Paddy is, right? And that's a big guy who, like, even if you don't like him.
Paddy's not devout of money. He signed a huge contract with Barstool.
Even still, right? Like, regardless, yes, fighters are able to, like, fighters with a brand do okay with themselves because of things they're able to generate, income they're able to generate outside of the UFC.
That's why they want to fight so much.
Right. But like, and Dana said he wanted to get guys 3 fights a year. And then Ngannou's talking about the talks that he had, the fights that weren't being offered to him. The more I look at the situation, the less I blame Ngannou for it. Like, you can say, oh, he wanted to be valued more than what he's worth, but looking at the contract that he got, yes, it's not the crazy numbers that were being thrown about, right?
Yeah.
But more importantly, when we talk about fighters, the thing that they care about the most is their legacy. Him being able to be part of, like, a chairman on the board for PFL Africa
Right.
is insane. Like, his legacy is now enshrined. He fought for better pay for fighters, and his opponents are gonna get paid.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'd take $2 million to get my ass knocked the fuck out by Francis Ngannou. Like, I would go in there, I would cut no weight. I would have to gain weight to fight at heavyweight, but I don't care. I'd still do it so that I could catch my $2 million and a fucking life-ending brain injury. But it's just insane to me that people are. I like Dana White's ability to string fights together, and I understand his importance to the promotion, but it seems like at times he's still running the UFC like it was in its infancy, where money was tight. Like, yes, that's how you build a brand, sure. But could this lead to a bigger situation where...
But he pays his top guys.
Does he, though?
Pretty sure. Well, I mean...
Because realistically, where is the majority of Conor McGregor's money from?
The Mayweather fight.
The Mayweather fight, and then parlaying that into Proper 12. Because he sold his stake in Proper 12.
Well, yeah, but he also made, like, he was like the first... I think he was the first one to make $1 million off a fight.
Yeah. But, like, he made $100 million off of boxing.
Yeah.
But Conor was one of the only ones allowed to do that. Ngannou wasn't going to be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me, right? So, like, clearly we're talking about playing favorites, guys wanting to chase the bag. I don't blame them. Ngannou was looking to build a legacy, not put money in his pocket.
Yeah, but not to get into what we saw in the Netflix series, but they kind of did Conor, like, he was doing, like, Dana White, like, protects his toys. Yeah. Like, a lot.
Sometimes to a fault.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think many people wanted to fight. As much as, like, Ngannou blames fucking Dana.
Yeah, there's nobody in the division who was stupid enough.
I don't think wanted. Yeah, many people wanted to fight.
He cleaned out the division.
There was no.
But that's not his fault,
right? It isn't. But also, right?
Like, forgive me for knocking everyone the fuck out.
I mean, if you're gonna give a knock on Ngannou,
yeah,
right, which I think you can, as soon as word got out that John Jones was moving up, and I think that was a fight that he wanted to bill, and Ngannou was like, no,
but he said no because of the lack of a contract. So his contract had expired.
Mm-hmm.
Dana wasn't offering him a new contract with remotely acceptable terms.
Right.
If Dana had come back and given a one-fight contract,
because
he said that he would be
think that
open to that.
I don't think that he thought... I'm going to be honest. I don't think that Dana White thought that Ngannou was that good.
I don't know how you think that after that man just ran through your fucking division like it was paper. I mean...
Because he said that... Dana White said that he watching the John Jones Sargon fight. Yeah. He said that he thinks that he's like, I think that the fight would have went the same way if it was Ngannou.
I don't know. Ngannou's a better wrestler than that. He showed that against Stipe. Way better with his takedown defense, especially in Stipe 2. Like,
but was that like top tier Stipe?
At Stipe 2, I don't know. It's hard because we didn't see enough of him.
Right.
And it's hard to tell what his motivation was. But also, like, I think...
don't get me wrong. Ngannou's a monster.
Yeah. I think he's one of the most dangerous men on the planet.
Right.
And at heavyweight, he tore through that division. I agree that nobody would have fought him. But if we look at, like, fights that could have happened, right? You theoretically could have billed Sergey Pavlovich if you brought him up
Sergey
in time.
Pavlovich wasn't around,
Not
big,
yet, but could have built in time. If we look at guys that he hasn't fought, right? You got Tai Tuivasa. These guys were on the up and coming. There were guys on the horizon. There just wasn't anyone immediately.
Right. And the fight doesn't make sense.
What doesn't make sense?
Like the fight, those fights don't make sense.
I mean, maybe not then, but I would have loved to see Pavlovich and Ngannou.
Now?
I'd love to see it now.
Right.
Right. But we're never going to, which is a shame. I think...
Who's he going to fight in the PFL?
He's just going to fight for fighting's sake. Like, again, yeah, he's going to destroy people in the PFL.
Yeah.
But again, what he cares about, what Ngannou cares about isn't the fights themselves, it's his legacy. What is he able to build with his money and his brand?
But now he's not going to fight for another year.
It won't matter because he's building UFC Africa. That's what mattered to him, right? Was that ability to build those things for the future.
Right.
And now he got that. That was the more important part, was that he was allowed to do something to that effect. He was also allowed to do prize fights, right? Like, those are things that, because he wanted to use that money to leverage but he finally got that out of his PFL contract. He could theoretically fight a bunch of no names in PFL.
Yeah.
And it won't matter to him.
He's going to make $1 zillion anyway.
Right, because he'll make the money.
Well,
but
he's calling out top tier. He wants a box.
Yeah.
I think you saw how much money Conor made.
Right. You're telling me that a Tyson Fury matchup wouldn't land a whole bunch of money?
Oh, make $1 zillion.
Yeah, it'd be grotesque. So if we take a look at...
I'd watch it.
The PFL fighters, and we look at heavyweight, their champion last year is Ante Delija. I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
Before that was Bruno Capoloza. I don't know who that is. And heavyweight's still a newer division for them. I just really think that there aren't that many heavyweight guys out there
anymore.
Right, I really just don't they're not. If we look at, that's featherweight. Let me see if I can get down to this is light heavyweight. They have, as weird as it sounds, a way better formatted page than UFC, which UFC needs to fix that shit. But they should split it into easier to read categories.
You must have missed it.
I must have scrolled through it.
It's right there.
This has got to be heavyweight. Yeah. So Adam Koresh, a 5-1 fighter. Ante Delija, 23-5. Bruno Capoloza, 16-6. Cody Goodell, 8-4. Dennis Goltsov, 30-7. Jamel Jones, 11-8. Juan Adams, 10-5.
Yeah, but
I don't know.
You gotta think though. If any of these guys were worth a piss, they'd be fighting in UFC.
Yeah, I mean he'll run through this division like it's nothing. Maybe the only guy who gives him some is a Croatian like Ante Delija, because you never know. Those Croatian heavyweights are sneaky, dude.
He looks big.
He does look big. This is maybe a guy who has a chance. But even still, does he have a third nipple? That's absolutely a third nipple. Maybe that gives him the advantage. But their champion, I just don't see him beating.
It was June 16th. We'll watch it and see how it looks.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming up Friday, June 16th, so we'll take a look at that PFL result. We'll see what happens. He hasn't fought. Yeah, the last one was the championship, so his first fight's going to be Friday, June 16th, to kick the season off. We'll see how he looks and report back. But absolutely insane. I think, though, for Gon, there are some things more important than money to him.
Yeah.
Because he was going to use the money for not himself.
Right.
And
he wants to build MMA.
Yeah, he wanted to really give opportunities to people ones that he was blessed enough to have. And what's weird, what I don't like about it is hearing how amicable he was, and Dana's kind of little girl reaction to, I didn't get the way I wanted it. I didn't get what I wanted. If you're offered a contract.
Dana was like, this makes sense. To put this guy who's not a businessman in a business spot.
But at the same time, I was offered, say, negotiations, right? We work on a year-to-year contract. If I walked in and they gave me no raise and they gave me, no opportunity for growth, I'd be like, fuck off.
Right.
I'll go work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? So that's effectively what happened. It's like, we have no clear path for you. We don't know how much money you'll be making for fights. You definitely can't go and fight prize fights in the meanwhile while we build the rest of the division back up.
Yeah.
There was no, like, as much as we want to say, oh, John Jones, Francis Ngannou, that wasn't set. There was no guarantee at the point of the contract negotiations.
Right.
So, like, Jones didn't come back until a year after the contract negotiations had started. So even still, you're going to sit this guy to train, have to spend all this money to train for a year with no clear, like, person sight. That's a tough spot to be in. Like, who's he fight again? Gane? There's no reason for him to fight Gane again. There was nobody else near that top of the division. So, like, while you have a good argument there that there was really no one built up, if I'm from Ngannou's side and I come in to sit down for a contract negotiation,
Yeah,
my
I guess
boss
it's not
says,
really-
I don't really know what's next.
Yeah, it's not really. I guess that's not really your job. Like, you can't.
Yeah, it's not your job to promote yourself and prepare for your
Like,
fight,
oh, you're
right?
too good.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, my bad. Yeah, sorry. I'll tone it down next time.
yeah.
Like, for him, I think if Dana had budged on the, hey, you can do a prize fight while we try and negotiate this Jones situation, or, hey, you can be a part of this expansion
But
project
why didn't you do it
in
anyway? He
Africa.
wasn't under contract.
So what that would have meant was that he wouldn't have been, he was negotiating under contract, so that would have stopped contract negotiations. So, like, he was still trying to make things work by coming to the table, when realistically what he should have done, what Ngannou should have done for himself, is just walk away entirely.
Yeah.
With the way the situation ended, he should have just walked away. But he gave Dana a chance, and honestly, Dana kind of comes off as being a little pouty. But if there's no clear plan that was outlined, right? If Dana White came back and said, we had X, Y, Z set up.
Well, they could have. They were like, yeah, the plan is fight Jones.
But he said that there was no plan. Right? Like, he was saying that he struggled to find things for
At that
and
point.
like at that point. So, like,
No,
if
but
you come to contract
but didn't
negotiations.
Ngannou want to fight like soon? And he was
Yeah.
like, "There's no one soon." But now he's not fighting soon.
Right. But it doesn't matter because he got the
He would
money.
have made a bunch of money if he fought
But he gets
Jones.
like massive signing bonus. He's getting way more with
Yeah.
PFL than he gets for fighting Jones.
Right, because that's he's gonna be the face of the franchise.
Right. And like, Dana did promise guys 3 fights a year and couldn't deliver for heavyweight.
Right.
If I'm Ngannou and there's no clear directive in my contract and there's no clear path to money,
Well, does he promise people 3 fights a year, or is that what some fighters want? Because it's not
he has said, a lot of fighters have come out and said that Dana has told them 3 fights.
because
a year.
that's the way they want to do it. Because it's like, well, like if you listen to other fighters talk about it, they call it like it's like a season,
Yeah.
right? So it's like if you break it up, their
It's
camps.
a nice campaign.
Right.
Yeah. You want to fight 3 times a year. And I mean, realistically, if we look at,
And it makes you better because you're staying active. And,
right, you're constantly training, you're able to pay for your training,
Right.
you're able to
Connor
have
makes
consistent
like
paychecks.
not to bring that up, but Connor makes a good like. It makes sense now looking at like. But we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah,
I
we'll
can
definitely get
see-
into it next week.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more to scratch on the surface, like especially when we start to talk about Fight Island and how that impacted Connor and how that kind of derailed that comeback train a little bit. And
I think a lot of things did.
yeah, there's a lot going on there, but
But
we'll unpack
he
that
didn't
next
look
week.
as like we were watching them again. I don't know if it was the editing of like the, but he didn't look as bad in a lot of those fights. That like I'm like watching them at like, and maybe it was because like I was just so sad.
I think they heavily edited because they didn't even show Poirier chewing his leg up in 2. They went to the aftermath.
No, but you already know that happened.
Yeah, but like,
That first round, like he was winning.
was he though?
Yeah,
Because
he
his
won.
leg was still getting chewed the fuck up. Like, even if he won on the cards, that damage, that accumulation of the damage was too much. It's like,
Well, that's
Poirier's-
what put him out was because the leg went dead.
Yeah, and like, so if you talk about that as like a game plan, yeah, go ahead, win on the cards, but Poirier won the, like, you may have won the battle, but Poirier won the war, right? That first round was more impactful in determining the events for Poirier than it was impactful for McGregor. But it's hard to really dig into that because, like, I think a lot of it is the editing. It's definitely a very heavy Connor spin.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, because they want to hype his comeback, but they hid some of the faults. Not all of them, though. And I think that'll be an interesting thing to discuss next week, but we have pretty much reached the end of our conversation here. Nothing in terms of next week's fights. But again, we will be talking about that documentary at length.
Can't wait.
I'm going to rewatch it in anticipation and
Probably.
take notes.
Yeah.
Just because I'm sure we have some...
Because there was, like, some things that you said, and I watched it, and I was like... That was, like... Because memory gets foggy. I think you, like, mixed a couple things up.
It's possible. Yeah, because I also was drinking pretty heavily while watching it. Because that's how it goes, you know? It's one of those late nights. You get bored. The lemonade's real good that time of night, and then it's all downhill from there. But all right, that takes us to the end of our episode this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or YouTube, and check out the Twitter at TSG MMA Podcast. That does it for us. Adios. No peace?
Peace.